ratio, ratio, ratio. So, let's talk about the word ratio. In terms of part of speech, it's actually a noun, which means you can use it as the subject or object in a sentence. For example, the ratio of boys to girls in the class is 3:2. Here, ratio is the main subject. Now, when we say that something has a certain ratio, what do we mean? Well, common usage suggests that a ratio is essentially a comparison between two or more things. It's like saying how much one thing is of another. So, if you have a recipe for cookies and it says 1 cup flour to 2 cups sugar, that's an example of a ratio, in this case, 1:2. Now, something special about the word ratio is that it can also be used as an adjective when we're talking about quantities or amounts. For instance, the city has a high population ratio compared to its size. In this sentence, population ratio is describing how many people live in the city based on its size. Just remember, when using the word ratio, you can always think of it as a comparison between two things. That'll help you use it correctly. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word ratio with their respective contexts. At the formal dinner party, Professor Thompson stood up to explain that the ideal ratio of red wine to white wine is typically around 2:1, as it allows the robust flavors of the red wine to be balanced by the crispness of the white, creating a harmonious culinary experience. In casual conversation at the coffee shop, Sarah mentioned that she loved the new energy drink she tried, which had a great ratio of caffeine to sugar, making it both refreshing and non-overwhelming for her sensitive stomach. At the marketing meeting, John emphasized that their new advertising campaign's return on investment, ROI, was an impressive 5:1 ratio, meaning they were getting $5 in sales for every dollar spent on advertising, which exceeded expectations and proved its effectiveness in reaching the target audience. In each example, the word ratio is used to convey a sense of balance or proportion. Whether it's in the context of wine at a dinner party, energy drinks at a coffee shop, or marketing campaigns at a business meeting. So you're trying to figure out what this ratio thing is. Essentially, it's a way of describing how something compares to itself in terms of quantity. Think of it like comparing apples to, well, more apples. You see, when we talk about ratios, we're looking at how many units of one thing there are for every unit of another. For example, if you have 3 cookies and I have 2 cookies, the ratio of your cookies to mine is 3:2. It's like a special kind of comparison that helps us see how things relate to each other in terms of amount. In math and science, ratios are super helpful for understanding proportions and rates. They're like a secret code that lets you compare stuff without getting lost in complicated numbers. Reject, reject, reject. So, let's talk about the verb reject. The part of speech is quite straightforward. It's a verb that means to refuse or decline something, such as an offer, proposal, or request in common usage. You might say, I reject this job offer because I don't think it's a good fit for me, or, she rejected his proposal of marriage. You can also use the negative form, not accept. So instead of saying, I reject your invitation, you could say, I don't accept your invitation. One special note to keep in mind is that while reject can imply a strong sense of disapproval, it's not always synonymous with refuse. If someone refuses something, they might be hesitant or unsure, whereas rejecting implies a more deliberate and often negative decision. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word reject, along with their contexts. In a formal court setting, if the judge refused to accept the defendant's plea bargain and deemed it an unsatisfactory agreement, she might say, "The court rejects this proposal and demands further negotiations." This usage emphasizes the idea of refusal or non-acceptance. Meanwhile, in a casual conversation between friends, someone who had just been turned down for their crush's affections might say, "I guess I was rejected by Emily. She said we shouldn't be together." Here, the tone is informal and conversational, emphasizing the personal aspect of rejection. In a business or academic context, such as in a research paper where an experiment fails to yield the desired results, one might write, "Our preliminary data suggests that this new method rejects previous assumptions about the effectiveness of our current treatment. Further study is necessary." This usage highlights the scientific process and the idea of a failed hypothesis. When we say something is rejected, we mean that it has been officially turned down or refused, usually after being considered or proposed for some reason. Imagine you apply for your dream job and don't get it. The company would be saying no to giving you the opportunity. Or, think of a team in a game who tries to make a move but the referee doesn't allow it, so they have to start over. In both cases, something that was initially considered or proposed is being declined or turned down. Revenue. 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 Let's talk about the word revenue. So, revenue is a noun, specifically a financial term that refers to the total income or earnings of an organization, business, or individual from their normal business activities. In common usage, you'll often hear it in phrases like, "Company revenue has increased by 20% this year," or, "The government's revenue has been affected by the economic downturn." What's important to note is that while revenue can be confused with income, there's a subtle difference. Revenue typically refers to the gross income before any expenses are subtracted, whereas income might include any kind of earnings, whether from business or other sources. So, if someone asks you about your company's revenue, they're really asking how much money you've made just from doing business, without considering any costs or expenses. In a meeting with investors, John mentioned that the company's revenue had increased by 20% last quarter, which was a significant improvement from the previous year's numbers and a testament to their successful marketing strategies. Meanwhile, over lunch with friends, Emily casually said, "I'm thinking of starting a small catering business on the side. And I've already got some steady revenue coming in just from word-of-mouth referrals." In an economics paper, Sarah wrote that government revenue from taxes had been declining due to the rise of e-commerce platforms and the increasing use of tax loopholes by online businesses, which posed a significant challenge for policymakers looking to balance their budgets. So you want to know about this important financial concept that businesses use to measure their success? Okay, let me explain. The amount of money that comes into a business from selling goods or services is called, well, we won't say it by name just yet. Let's call it the lifeblood of the company. It's like the water that plants need to grow. And businesses use this lifeblood to pay for things, invest in new ideas, and make a profit. When people buy something from a business, they're contributing to its lifeblood, which is then used to fund growth, improve services, and maybe even give some of it back to the community as a thank you for being loyal customers.